Let's talk CRM migrations. Now, CRM migrations are one of those things that most people think of as an absolute headache. It's going to be a complete nightmare. One of the most important parts of the process is employee engagement. In order for a CRM to be successful, you need everyone who needs to use it to be using it. It's only as good as the data it contains, and that's only as good as the people entering that data. So the most important part of the start of the process and throughout the entire migration is employee engagement. And it comes before you even choose your CRM. So why is it important to talk to your staff and get employee engagement even before you choose your CRM? Well, you don't always know exactly how everyone is using your CRM. And there may be features that they have that they can't lose, or that they would need to use the CRM better. So before you even select your CRM, find every member of staff who uses it. And I do mean literally everyone. And what you need to do is ask them what features they use. What features do they need that they don't have? And then you can start to break it down by what features are business critical and what features are just nice to haves, make life easier, which ones will have time implications, resource implications. Because when you break that down by department and you break it down by theme, you might find that the CRM you were thinking of doesn't actually do a critical thing that a particular team needs. If you need to make the decision that you will use a different system or eliminate that information, that's okay, but you need to know before you start. Because if you do this without consultation, employee engagement is the least of your concerns, but it will be a big concern. Once you've made your decision, you obviously need to communicate that, and you should communicate it early. Don't wait until you're halfway through the migration and you want people to start using the new system. Let them know as soon as you've selected it, and let them know why you've chosen that particular one, because there will probably be some compromises for different teams, for different individuals, because no CRM is going to do everything exactly the way everyone wants it. So if you want people to engage, you need to explain to them why you've made that choice, what the rationale is behind that. And you should personalize those messages to different teams, because the sales team need to know something different than the service team, than the marketing team, than the tech team. So make sure that you are talking about the features that are relevant to them. Listing a load of cool sales functions is not going to engage staff in other departments. So I mentioned communicating early, and the earlier you signpost the migration, the better, because people don't generally love change, and giving them time to get used to the idea, to have their say, sometimes to have a little bit of a moan and a grumble, but to come around to the idea and to get on board will make a big difference in the success of your migration project. And as well as communicating early, you need to communicate often. This type of project isn't one where you can tell people at the beginning and you can tell them again at the end, this is what's happened. It's a system that should be embedded in your business. And in order for that to work, you need everyone using it, and you need them to be on board with any changes you make to it. So let people know as things go on, share the milestones, share any news that you've learned, any successes, any early failures that you've resolved, any issues that have been raised. One of the most useful things you can do is create an FAQ document, because you'll get lots and lots of questions from people, and a lot of them will be genuinely frequently asked questions. So having a living, live FAQ document that you add to as more and more people ask questions not only gives you a fantastic resource for people, it gives you a reason to communicate again. It gives you a reason to say, hey, we've updated the FAQs, take a look. If you have any more questions, please get in touch with us so we can continue to update this. Creating training materials well in advance of go live is also really useful, because people can start to get a feel for the system. Set up demos with people who are particularly excited about the change and people who are particularly unexcited about the change, because the excited ones will become your super users, and we'll talk more about them in a minute. And the ones who are really negative you really need to win them over. The earlier you start trying to do that, the more successful your migration will be. I've mentioned training for super users, but you do obviously need to create training for all members of staff who are going to be using your new CRM. And to build engagement, you obviously need those team members to have relevant training. There's no sense in training everyone exactly the same way because they won't be using it in the same way. So work out what elements of your CRM need to be completely standardized across the entire business. Everyone will do the same thing. Create some training around that. Then look at the personalization for each department, because you will build much more engagement if people can see how it will affect their day-to-day, not someone in the accounts department that they're never going to deal with. So training is essential. Personalized training is even better. Another area you need to look at is how people learn best. So you should have different types of training. Written documents, video training, demos, and live setup workshops are all really important, because someone who learns best through a video may not get much out of your written documentation, and vice versa. Having those live demos is really important for people to be able to see and connect with the system, understand how they will use it really visually. So build out training for different types of learner, make sure all of that training is available to all members of staff, and personalize your training based on the day-to-day needs of each user. That's how you get a group of users who will actually engage with the CRM, will support the migration, and will give you value for money in the new system that you've set up. Let's talk super users. So super users or champions or advocates are your on-the-ground team who are going to be getting people on board with this new CRM that you're using. They should be from a range of different departments, from a range of different seniority levels, because what you need is a broad coverage of people who are going to help and encourage their colleagues to get on board with this CRM. So your super users should have early access. They should have some training sessions and extra training, help with setup. They should be given every possible success criteria so that they are able to then support everyone else. So generally those kind of extra training sessions mean they can ask the types of questions that everyone will ask, they can learn the answers, and then if they've got a colleague who has a question, they can say, oh, I know the answer to that, I can help you. It reduces the burden on the project team to get everyone on board, especially if you have a large organization. You don't always have enough resource to get everyone trained by the project team. So having those super users can pick up a load of the little questions, the little niggles. Sometimes a little bit of swag helps ease the way with those super users, but ultimately what you need is a team of advocates who will talk to their colleagues, who will pick up on any issues, get them resolved, take that resolution back to their colleagues. It's easier to do that than have just the project team who are, perceived to be biased in favor of the new CRM. The super users have a little bit of a less biased feel to the other team members, so they can really help move the process along. Definitely get super users. Even if you have a small business, a couple of super users will be beneficial. If you have a large business, they're pretty much essential. Every kind of rollout will have some people who are really engaged, some people who are medium engaged, and some people who just don't engage at all. And for the most part, in most contexts, that's fine. 90% of people on board is pretty good. But there are times and there are projects where 100% is required, because if someone is not using a CRM, then the data that you have cannot be relied on. Now, if they don't need to use the CRM, that's one thing. But if someone who interacts with your customers or your marketing or your sales and they don't update the CRM, you will have data that does not give you what you need, which means your CRM is effectively not as functional as you need it. So you need to actively seek out people who are not engaging. during the migration process. This is a really important piece of the puzzle, because if they're not engaging during the process, they're certainly not going to be engaged once the process is finished and they're expected to use the new system. So you may need an individualized one-on-one approach to getting those people on board, whether you do that yourselves as part of the project team or you get your champions involved. You need to pick up every person who's going to be a CRM user as part of this engagement. Now, some people are really hard to engage, and sometimes there needs to be either a carrot or a stick involved, depending on your company culture. Obviously, we would always prefer a carrot because people generally are more incentivized. But if it gets to a point where a stick is necessary, then you have to bear in mind how important this is to your business. Because if it is as important as it should be, then you can't have people who refuse to engage. You have to be able to rely on your data and rely on your teams to do what needs to be done. So all of this video so far has been talking about the carrots and talking about how we get people to engage, how we connect with them and make them a part of the process. But sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, and you have to be prepared to say either the data doesn't matter as much as we would like to think it does, or this person needs to be spoken to firmly about their use of the system. So let's finish with a few quick engagement tips. Things like competitions and incentives can make a massive difference, especially if you have a lot of people who aren't particularly engaged. They're not disengaged, but it's just a thing that's happening in the background. Competitions and incentives can get people to pay attention. You might want to incentivize training activities, or do a competition for who completes the training first, or who has achieved the most modules. However your system is going to be rolled out, find milestones that you can incentivize. Sometimes just some swag. People like free stuff. Does the CRM that you're buying have swag that you can give out? If not, are there things that you can buy, low cost, little things that would make a difference and make people more excited? You can also have leaderboards and, pit people against each other, pit teams against one another in a friendly competition to get people, engaged in the process. And that could be from the very beginning. In fact, it should be from the very beginning. That's why we look at the milestones. So don't wait until the rollout is almost complete. Bring in those kind of incentives from the early days. Which team submits the most feature requests? That might be one you don't want to incentivize, but which team submits theirs first? Which person submits the most questions? Which super user converts the most people? Find ways to incentivize, because, competitions, incentives, even gold stars and badges actually get people quite interested. Gamification is a really popular thing. So gamifying your CRM rollout can really make a difference to your employee engagement.